The Second World War introduced a theater of conflict unlike any before it, stretching across vast, unforgiving oceans. Naval strategy focused heavily on colossal battleships and fast, lethal destroyer escorts, the established giants of sea warfare. Yet, amid this powerful fleet, an unlikely and often mocked aircraft took up one of the most critical roles, the non-rigid airship, or blimp. These lighter-than-air behemoths were slow, vulnerable, and seemed wholly obsolete against the modern machinery of war. Their primary mission was the relentless, thankless task of anti-submarine warfare, guarding the precious supply convoys. The convoys were the lifeblood of the Allied effort, carrying essential materials to fuel the fight on two global fronts. Without the safe passage of these cargo ships, the entire war machine would grind to a catastrophic halt. This strange, buoyant fleet of airships was the American answer to the hidden terror that stalked the sea lanes. Their very appearance inspired ridicule from the enemy, who saw them as clumsy, outdated novelties easily dismissed. Japanese and German commanders initially scoffed at the mere idea of a lumbering fabric balloon posing any serious threat. They viewed the appearance of a U.S. Navy blimp as little more than a peculiar, laughable nuisance in the grand scheme of things. This deeply held arrogance would soon be shattered by a quiet, persistent campaign of air superiority over the surface. The humble K-class blimps, often called K-ships, would dramatically rewrite the rules of the subsurface hunt. They were equipped not with heavy cannon, but with eyes, radar, and the terrifying potential of depth charges. Their strange, peaceful shape belied their sudden and devastating ability to deliver explosive payloads from above. The world was about to learn that speed and armor were not the only measures of a deadly wartime predator. The history of military airships stretches back to the early 20th century, where they were briefly considered futuristic weapon platforms. During the First World War, the German Zeppelin became a famous symbol of aerial terror and long-range reconnaissance. However, the rapid development of fixed-wing aircraft quickly rendered the rigid airship concept dangerously obsolete. By the 1930s, the tragic and spectacular disasters of airships like the R-101 and the Hindenburg sealed their public fate. The world largely viewed them as magnificent but inherently flawed relics destined for the museum of past technologies. Despite this global perception, the United States Navy maintained a small but dedicated, highly trained airship program. They realized the unique benefits that only a lighter-than-air craft could possibly offer to a modern military force. The Navy focused its attention on the smaller, more manageable non-rigid blimps, eschewing the massive rigid frameworks. These non-rigid airships could be rapidly constructed, were cheaper to operate, and required less expansive ground infrastructure. They were seen as an economical solution for coastal patrols, a necessity that quickly grew into a vital wartime role. Naval strategists understood that the key to modern submarine hunting was extended observation, not high velocity. A fixed-wing plane could cover more distance, but it could only stay on station for a small, fleeting fraction of the time. The airship offered the unprecedented capability of remaining airborne for many dozens of hours on a single, continuous flight. This stamina became the single most crucial factor in transforming the blimp from a relic into an indispensable weapon system. The K-ships were ready to prove that endurance and visibility could easily conquer swift speed and raw firepower. The K-class airship was an intentional design born of practicality, necessity, and a focus on long-term efficiency. Its non-rigid structure consisted of a streamlined, football-shaped fabric envelope filled with inert, non-flammable helium gas. This envelope retained its shape through the internal pressure of the lifting gas, making the structure remarkably robust. The control car, or gondola, was slung beneath the massive gas bag, providing a stable platform for the crew and equipment. Within this relatively small car, the crew of 10 to 12 men lived, flew, and constantly scanned the waves below. They were equipped with primitive but functional radar, an absolute necessity for detecting surface vessels in fog or darkness. More importantly, the airships were outfitted with powerful, magnetic anomaly detection equipment, known as MAD gear. This highly sensitive instrument was designed to detect the subtle disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field caused by a large metal hull. The slow speed and low altitude of the K-ship were perfect for this MAD equipment to operate with maximum efficiency. Cruising at only 50 miles per hour, they could sweep vast tracts of ocean in a systematic and exhaustive manner. The airships carried a modest but lethal payload of powerful Mark 17 depth charges, capable of crippling a submerged vessel. Their patrol flights could routinely last for more than 24 hours, sometimes even stretching toward 2 full days. This endurance meant that a small number of airships could effectively protect an enormous, linear convoy for its entire crossing. The crews would take turns resting in the cramped quarters, maintaining an almost perpetual vigil over the deep waters. The K-ship was an unconventional hunter, but its combination of technology, endurance, and quiet patience was utterly unique. News of the U.S. Navy's decision to deploy blimps for convoy duty traveled through intelligence channels to the Axis powers. Japanese naval commanders, in particular, found the entire concept to be a source of immediate and profound amusement. They had invested heavily in large, sophisticated submarines built for long-range offensive operations across the Pacific theater. To them, the American airship represented a profound technological regression, a sentimental throwback to an earlier, forgotten conflict. They saw only a giant, slow-moving target with a cloth skin, a laughable challenge for any competent anti-aircraft gunner. The sight of a blimp on a horizon was initially met with contempt, not fear, and often became a subject for casual mockery. They reasoned that a submarine could easily evade detection by simply submerging, leaving the airship impotent and clueless. Furthermore, they believed a single, quick burst of machine gun fire would be sufficient to bring the giant, soft target plummeting to the water. This deeply ingrained sense of superiority led to a dangerous, dismissive complacency among submarine crews in both oceans. They did not understand the unique visual and technological advantages that the blimps brought to the deadly hunting game. The clear, elevated viewpoint of the airship's gondola provided an unparalleled, comprehensive view of the ocean surface. From that silent height, a skilled observer could spot the telltale signs of a submerged submarine, even at significant depth. Oil slicks, subtle color changes in the water, or the tiny, fleeting wake of a periscope were all glaringly visible. This early, arrogant dismissal would prove to be one of the most consequential miscalculations of the naval war for the Axis. The airships were not fast, but they were pervasive, persistent, and their very presence forced the subs to stay far beneath the surface. The first operational patrols of the K-ships began quietly, without fanfare, over the critical shipping lanes near the coastlines. Their initial tasks involved mundane, routine sweeps, monitoring for mines, observing distress signals, and reporting weather conditions. They were the aerial shepherds for the vulnerable convoys, flying in a slow, protective circuit around the perimeter of the formation. The airships flew so low and so deliberately that the crews aboard the cargo ships grew accustomed to their reassuring, constant presence. The sound of their twin radial engines was a low, distant hum, a comforting counterpoint to the endless, rhythmic crash of the waves. It was during these extensive patrols that the airship's true tactical value began to slowly, but undeniably, emerge. The subsurface predators quickly realized that a blimp overhead meant the complete loss of their freedom to maneuver. A submarine could not risk surfacing to recharge its vital batteries or ventilate the oppressive, stale air for the crew. To surface was to risk being instantly spotted and marked by the relentless, silent eye of the airborne sentinel above. Even a brief moment on the surface meant exposing the vessel to an immediate attack from a surprise depth charge run. The patrol shifts became long, mind-numbing stretches of constant vigilance for the K-ship crews, requiring immense mental fortitude. They perfected the art of spotting the slightest anomaly in the ocean's vast, shimmering uniformity, a skill honed by sheer repetition. The K-ships proved to be extremely effective at detecting submarines that had been driven to shallow waters close to the coast. Their mere presence forced the U-boats and Japanese subs further out to sea, away from the crucial harbor entrances and exits. This simple act of aerial deterrence was an invaluable contribution, saving countless lives and millions of tons of vital supplies. In the early stages of the war, the German U-boat wolf packs brought the Allied war effort to the very brink of disaster. Their highly coordinated attacks across the Atlantic Ocean sank merchant ships at a horrifying, unsustainable pace. The American coastline itself was not immune, as U-boats prowled the eastern seaboard, sinking vessels within sight of shore. The initial lack of effective countermeasures led to what became known as the Second Happy Time for the German submariners. They operated with near impunity, devastating Allied supply lines and causing crippling losses to the logistical network. Naval strategists frantically searched for any effective technology that could give them an undeniable edge against the hidden killers. This desperate search for a solution is precisely where the seemingly anachronistic airship found its unexpected, vital niche. The vast, empty mid-Atlantic gap, beyond the range of most land-based aircraft, was the most dangerous zone for convoys. The K-ship's extraordinary endurance provided a mobile, persistent shield that could extend protection further than ever before. Their ability to maintain a 24-hour presence became the countermeasure that the struggling surface fleet desperately needed. The slow, methodical patrol was the antithesis of a quick, aggressive fighter plane, but it perfectly suited the submarine hunt. The U-boat commanders who had once scoffed at the sight of the blimp soon had to revise their tactics and their assumptions. The blimps were not easily swatted flies, they were a new, tireless form of aerial patrol that fundamentally changed the odds. Every airship sighting now meant an immediate, deep dive and an extended period of dangerous, battery-draining submergence. The blimps had successfully taken their happy and entirely out of the U-boat's devastating and highly effective happy time period. One of the most dramatic and telling encounters involved the K-74 blimp, a patrol craft assigned to the Caribbean Sea. In July of 1943, K-74 was on a routine night patrol near the Florida Straits, a crucial transit point for all Allied shipping. The airship's radar operator detected a surface contact that was not broadcasting the proper identification codes for an Allied vessel. The captain, Lieutenant Nelson Grills, ordered an immediate investigation of the mysterious, unknown surface target. The blimp quietly descended through the darkness, relying on the cover of the night to approach the suspected enemy vessel. They soon identified the contact as the German U-boat U-134, which had surfaced to recharge its exhausted batteries. This was the terrifying scenario that every U-boat captain desperately hoped to avoid in the presence of any air cover. Lieutenant Grills immediately maneuvered the massive airship for an aggressive, low-altitude attack run against the submarine. The crew prepared the depth charges for release, but the element of surprise was lost in the very last, critical moments. U-134's lookout spotted the dark silhouette of the K-74 against the dimly starlit sky and opened fire with a heavy anti-aircraft gun. The small, vulnerable control car of the airship was quickly riddled with heavy machine gun fire, severely wounding crewmen. K-74 managed to release its depth charges, but they unfortunately failed to arm due to the extremely low altitude of the attack dive. The airship, grievously damaged and losing helium, was forced to ditch into the ocean waves in a gentle, controlled descent. Despite the U-boat escaping in the darkness, the bravery of K-74 demonstrated the airship's willingness to engage in direct combat. It was the only U.S. airship to ever be shot down by an enemy vessel during the entire course of the Second World War. The airship possessed several inherent operational advantages that even the fastest patrol planes could simply not match. Its most obvious strength was its ability to hover silently and precisely over a suspicious spot for an indefinite period of time. A fixed-wing aircraft would have to execute a wide, fast turn to circle back, often losing sight of the fleeting target in the process. The blimp could simply stop and stare, its crew utilizing the large windows of the control car to meticulously examine the water below. This unique hovering capability was especially critical when the crew suspected a submerged target without clear confirmation. The airship could also deploy sophisticated hydrophones, lowered into the water on cables, to listen for the faint sounds of the submarine. Furthermore, its gentle, smooth-riding characteristics made it an ideal platform for the use of sensitive electronic equipment. The steady nature of the flight provided perfect conditions for the magnetic anomaly detection gear to operate effectively. MAD gear, designed to find the large metal hull of a submerged submarine, performed best when flown low and absolutely steady. The blimp offered the perfect combination of slow speed, low altitude, and unmatched stability for this vital detection work. The long-duration flights meant that an airship crew became intimately familiar with a specific sector of the open ocean. They knew every current, every pattern of surface debris, and every anomaly that could possibly indicate a hidden presence. This cumulative, deep knowledge of their patrol zone made them exceptionally skilled in discerning the subtle signs of a predator. The blimps were truly a unique marriage of a persistent aerial platform and highly sensitive, necessary subsurface detection tools. Their quiet effectiveness fundamentally changed the operational calculus for the entire Axis submarine fleet in the war. While the initial laughter of the Japanese commanders was understandable, it rapidly morphed into a grim, cold realization. The Imperial Japanese Navy deployed its powerful submarines across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean for offensive operations. These large vessels were designed to strike at American aircraft carriers and attack vital, high-value coastal fortifications. However, the continuous and relentless presence of the American airships began to severely limit their operational freedom. Japanese submarines, particularly those operating near the west coast of the United States, were severely hampered by the constant patrols. They could no longer surface with the same casual confidence, knowing an eye in the sky was always watching, always waiting. The airships effectively served as massive, mobile barriers, forcing the submarines to take long, circuitous, and wasteful detours. These detours not only burned precious fuel but also dramatically increased the time it took to complete their critical missions. This constant threat forced Japanese commanders to assign a new, unexpected priority to the blimps in their operational planning. The slow, ridiculous targets now commanded immediate respect and were treated as a grave and dangerous threat to all vessels. Japanese submarine captains were specifically ordered to avoid the airship patrol zones at all costs, diverting their entire planned routes. The psychological pressure of the unceasing surveillance also took a heavy toll on the morale of the highly trained submarine crews. Operating at deep, crushing depths for extended periods led to exhaustion and a persistent, overwhelming state of combat stress. The American airships had successfully established a quiet, pervasive form of aerial dominance over the critical coastal waters. The initial scorn had been brutally replaced by a cold, operational fear of the silent, hovering eyes watching from the deep blue sky. The ultimate shift in the Axis perception came not from intelligence reports, but from the simple, terrifying, lived experience of being hunted. For a submarine crew, the scariest moment is the absolute realization that they have been definitely spotted by an enemy anti-submarine unit. When a blimp was spotted, the reaction was immediate and entirely desperate, a crash dive to the maximum operational depth. The crew knew that the airship could follow their every move on the surface and had a lethal payload ready for immediate deployment. The airships became incredibly effective at spotting the brief, fleeting wake of a submarine that was attempting a quick, stealthy dive. Once that wake was seen, the airship would simply fly in a meticulous, box-shaped pattern over the last known position of the vessel. The submarine was then pinned in place, unable to move without revealing its position, or surface without facing an immediate attack. This pinning tactic was the true genius of the airship's role, essentially neutralizing the stealth advantage of the underwater vessel. The blimp would then call in powerful, fast surface escorts, coordinating the final, lethal hunt with exceptional precision. The airship served as the critical aerial spotter, guiding the destroyers directly to the exact location of the trapped, hidden prey. The submarine was then forced to endure a terrifying sequence of depth charge attacks from the destroyers above. Even without a direct hit, the prolonged, relentless attacks could damage vital systems and shatter the nerves of the crew inside. The Japanese and German subs learned that the airship was a far more serious threat than its slow speed initially suggested. It was not a weapon built for the kill, but rather a perfect, tireless tool built for the inescapable and deadly discovery. The silent, hovering shape above became the ultimate harbinger of the violent, crushing attack that was about to unfold. The crews of the K-ships were some of the most dedicated and yet least celebrated servicemen of the entire naval war effort. They faced extreme fatigue, the persistent danger of weather, mechanical failure, and the constant threat of a surprise attack. Their mission was often lonely, conducted far from the sight of friendly ports or the comforting presence of other warships. They flew through relentless rainstorms, dense, disorienting fog banks, and the unpredictable fury of tropical hurricanes. The non-rigid airships were inherently vulnerable to bad weather, and maintaining control required intense focus and skill. The crews faced long, grueling hours in the cramped, exposed control car, enduring the cold and the constant, dull vibration. Despite these hardships, the airship patrols maintained an astonishing operational record throughout the entire conflict. The official records confirm that no convoy protected by a U.S. Navy airship was ever successfully attacked by an enemy submarine. This statistic alone speaks volumes about the incredible and unmatched effectiveness of the lighter-than-air patrol method. The blimps were credited with a dozen confirmed sightings of enemy submarines that were actively preparing for an attack. These immediate sightings allowed surface escorts to launch rapid counterattacks, saving a tremendous amount of lives and material. The airship's greatest success was often the simple, quiet act of deterrence, forcing the submarines to stay deep and completely ineffective. Their crucial work meant the steady flow of supplies and troops across the oceans could continue, unbroken and mostly unimpeded. These men and their magnificent, floating patrol ships were truly the unsung and tireless guardians of the vital American supply line. By the conclusion of World War II, the U.S. Navy airship patrol program stood as a triumphant, albeit quiet, military success story. The fleet of over 130 K-ships flew more than 55,000 operational sorties, logging over 500,000 hours of flight time in total. They proved beyond any doubt that a perceived relic of the past could find a vital, essential role in modern warfare. The Japanese commanders who had once scoffed at the concept were forced to begrudgingly acknowledge the blimp's tactical power. Post-war analysis confirmed that the airships were one of the most effective and efficient anti-submarine platforms in the naval inventory. Their success was a clear testament to the military principle that the right tool for the job is not always the newest or the fastest weapon. It is often the tool that can stay on station the longest, providing the most persistent, comprehensive, and accurate surveillance coverage. The Navy continued to use airships for a period following the end of the conflict, particularly for critical coastal defense duties. However, the rapid improvements in radar technology and the extended range of helicopters eventually led to the program's official retirement. The last operational U.S. Navy blimp was officially decommissioned in the year 1962, marking the end of a unique era in naval aviation. Today, their story serves as a fascinating and important reminder that strategic thought must often look beyond conventional expectations. The lumbering, laughable balloon became an indispensable hero, quietly winning a critical battle against the hidden terrors of the deep. The airship's legacy is a powerful story of perseverance, innovation, and the eventual triumph of endurance over pure, raw speed.